Hello, my name is Manuela. Here I am with some of my friends that have been studying English about for 2 or 3 years, and as far as we are now, we are part of the second part of the method is this, that we are reading all together a book this book that is called The Merchant of Venice by William Shakespeare. So the story is mostly about Antonio, a very rich man that has a friend named Bassanio. That Bassanio asked him to borrow some money from him to impress Portia, a beautiful young lady from another city that was very rich and that was very beautiful, for Portia to marry him. So, Antonio didn't have his money in this time because his ships were at sea with all his goods. So he decided to ask to borrow money from Shylock, a very rich but a very bad man who borrowed money, and to those who didn't pay him would suffer very much with him. So Antonio decided to ask some money borrowed from Shylock. So Shylock hated Antonio because Antonio was very good, very nice to people. So he hated him because of that. So he made a deal with Antonio that he would give him the 3,000 pounds of money if he accepted that if he didn't pay him back, he would cut a pound of his flesh and kill him that way. Bassanio told Antonio not to make the deal, but Antonio was convinced that his ships would come on time, so he accepted. Then, with the money that Shylock gave Antonio, Bassanio went to another city to visit Portia. Portia's father was a very rich old man who was close to die, and he wanted to see his daughter with a husband and a good family before he was dead. So he decided to make 3 boxes, one of leather, another of wood, and another of silver, and another of gold. These 3 boxes that were in this moment at sea, soon arriving, contained different pictures. In the box that any man opened that had the picture of Portia, that man who found it would marry her. Portia wasn't very convinced about this idea, but she trusted her father and was very afraid of disappointing him. Many men traveled from big cities to this city just to open the box with the picture of Portia. Between these men was Bassanio. The first man to open one of the boxes was a prince from a big country. Then, when the prince opened the box, he found just a skull of a dead person. He was very disappointed about not having Portia's picture. The second man of having the chance to open a second box was another prince from a bigger country. This prince instead of finding the picture of the beautiful Portia, he found the corpse of a dead person, which meant that he couldn't marry Portia. Then the last man in opening the third box was Bassanio. But when Bassanio opened the box, he found a beautiful picture of a beautiful young lady named Portia. He was very excited because he knew that this meant that he would marry Portia and they would live very happy for many time. So Portia was very happy too because she knew Bassanio and she knows that he would be a good husband. But then, time after, Bassanio received a letter from Antonio saying very bad news. There was a shipwreck at sea, and his ships with all his goods had been wrecked and lost at sea. This meant that he would have to give a pound of his meat to Shylock. Bassanio was very worried for his friend Antonio, and Antonio said too in his letter that do not worry for him, but that he wanted to see Bassanio before dying. Bassanio quickly knew what he had to do. He had to travel back to the city and talk with Shylock and Antonio before this evil deed was made. Portia was very worried about Bassanio's friend too, so she offered Shylock lots of money, even more than what he had borrowed for Antonio. But Shylock was convinced he didn't want any money. He just wanted a pound of Antonio's flesh, and he wasn't gonna rest until he got it. But Portia got a young lawyer that was very friend of hers. She asked him if he could lend her some lawyer clothes. The lawyer quickly accepted and told her some suggestions about how to defend Antonio in his trial. A trial was going to take place at the city. Bassanio was very worried, so he decided to marry Portia before making this trial. Then Antonio left his beautiful wife and traveled back to the city. Where Antonio was imprisoned until his trial was made. Okay, this is so far in the chapter we are. So we are gonna read some more for you to know specifically how is the book about and why are we reading it. Very well. So Laura, please go on.